to welcome you this evening for the launching of the Gozo section of the Philsophy Foundation of Malta. Today we can say is a dream come true. This was one of our dreams actually, to be able to disseminate even the foundation, Philsophy Sharing, in our sister island, and today this dream is actually becoming a reality. This evening also we have the pleasure to be able to launch the second issue of the magazine Share. Unfortunately, we had some problems with the printing of this second issue, and we have only some copies which obviously you can browse through, hoping that we will be having the copies in the coming days so that you can actually have your own personal copy. We hope that this initiative will be a success. We are very hopeful that the members of the Gozitan section will work in strict collaboration with the Malta section to be able to disseminate, as we said, philosophical ideas and concepts even here in Gozo. So I would like to thank you once again for accepting our invitation, and I would like now to give the words to Dr. Samit to have with us. Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, it's my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm substituting the minister because he's occupied in another event and wasn't able to be here tonight with us. It's a pleasure for us Gozitans to have you here in Gozo because sharing of opinion, sharing of ideas, sharing of knowledge is essential, particularly in a very, very small society and a conservative society such as Gozo is. There's Dr. Gozo in front of me, and I'm remembering of a book right now who he suggested to me, which he suggested to me some years ago. Actually, it was the name, if I remember correctly, was the book was entitled A Wicked Company. It was written by, I suppose, a French or Viennese author, and it delved into the debates and intellectual sharing of opinions which took place in the French salon preceding the French Revolution, ranging from the era from the 1750s to the 1770s. 20-30 years full of verve and intellectual rebellion. And it, to a certain extent, it sparked the French Revolution, because these authors, these thinkers who were meeting in the French salon, in the Parisian salon, the City of Lights, which ranged from David Hume to Adam Smith to Diderot to Baron Paul Thierry d'Holbach and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. These people who shared these controversial, at that moment in time, these controversial ideas, which to a certain extent sparked the French Revolution, these ideas of atheism, of rebellion towards the diktat of the church and the aristocracy, the freedom of expression, the right to life, liberty, and property, which was propounded by John Locke, and to a certain extent translated into the American Constitution by Benjamin Franklin. These people also, this verve, this revolution started in these salons, which, if you look at them, were maybe innocuous at that moment in time, but in reality, they were a hotbed of revolutionary ideas. To a certain extent, your foundation is a foundation based upon these Parisian salons, in the sense that it propounds the idea that intellectual debate has to be nurtured and shared. Your magazine, if I'm not mistaken, is called Share. So there it is. What's in the name? But share is actually the idea of all it. Sharing information, because knowledge is power. And I wish to congratulate particularly the Circolo Gozitano, because they have taken the initiative to help you and assist you establish yourself in the sister island of Gozo. And I wish to congratulate in particular the Circolo Gozitano, because it has made quite huge strides in these last couple of years, particularly in promoting the idea of debate. Actually, in the next 2 weeks, I think in mid-April, they are going to organize another conference, which will deal not with an intellectual idea as such, but they will be dealing with the physical connectivity of Gozo in 3 weeks' time, if I'm correct, no? So actually, this is a very interesting forum, which is helping us Gozitans debate our own existence at this moment in time, because connectivity is part and parcel of our existence to a certain extent. Father Montebello will be giving us quite an interesting lecture about an idea. What are we to obey? And I hope we will delve into, particularly, I am hailing from the legal aspect of life. I really hope he will delve into the idea of natural rights, of positivism, which was propounded by Hans Kelsen, the idea of human rights and individual freedoms and fundamental freedoms, and their evolution over these 60 years. I don't wish to take a lot of minutes tonight, but I wish to congratulate you for establishing this foundation in Gozo, and I hope this will be the spark of a lot of intellectual debate in our small petit salon. And I wish to congratulate as well the Circolo Gozitano, which is helping us and assisting you to have this intellectual debate in this sister island. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zami. I would like to invite now Father Mark Montebello to be able to give us his talk, the philosophy of disobedience.
Thank you.
Hello. Okay, our first talk for the new section in Gozo, we chose a theme on obedience, whether we should always obey. And obedience is, first and foremost, a question of wills. My will and others' will. Which will prevail? Obedience is obeying orders. And so there is a supreme or superior will and an inferior will, and the inferior will has to obey the superior one. So it's always more or less obedience, a question of pitching two wills, at least two, against each other, because someone has to do as the other commands. And most philosophers, political philosophers, and moral philosophers have taken this view that obedience within a structure, a social structure, within a scheme of things, is a pitching of two wills, at least two wills, against each other. So, most political philosophers have considered this in relation to a legitimate state, like ours, for instance. It's a legitimate state. Should you obey a legitimate state? Or an illegitimate state? I don't know, a dictator or something like that. And their answer was, yes, you should obey a legitimate state, like ours, with reservation. That is, if the state, though it's legitimate, orders things which are not legitimate, then you should obey the state, but not in those things. And if it's illegitimate, you don't obey at all. You have the right not to obey. Usually, it was taken in this sense. Others would have taken the same subject of obedience in the context of religion. And there it is different, because the authority is God. So after due discernment, and this is important, after due discernment, God must be obeyed always, not with reservation. That was the main way that political philosophers and moral philosophers saw this thing. After due consideration, after due discernment, that is, if a superior, if the Pope says, orders something which is against the gospel, after due discernment, you'll see that that's not the Spirit of God, and you have a right not to obey the Pope in that case. But if after due discernment you say that it is not against the Gospels or against natural law, then you should obey. So God has to be obeyed always after due discernment. But the problem is, so most philosophers have taken the issue of obedience on this level, the political level. If you do a quick research on a quick Google research, those are the things which will come up. The relationship between obedience and the state or religion. But obedience is much wider than that, and also, I would suggest, deeper. It is wider because we don't only obey the state, and we don't only obey God, if at all. First of all, we are physical beings, and there is a level of obedience on this level, the mere physical level. For instance, you cannot stay all day on your head. You have to obey the law of gravity, which is the other way around. And you cannot eat poisons just not to obey the law of good food. You have to obey the law that regulates these things. So there's a certain kind of physical obedience that must be respected. For instance, you cannot sleep vertically. You have to sleep horizontally, because that is sort of the natural way of getting some rest. So there is a kind of obedience there. So already this is not the state, and this is not God. It is a physical thing, and we have to obey it. We cannot go out of this room from the window. It's too high. We cannot do that. We have to take the stairs or the lift. So there's a physical law, and we have to obey that. So there is a certain kind of obedience which we cannot do without. We have to obey those. There are then, of course, a certain kind of obedience on an interpersonal level. The relationship with your wife or your husband or people in general. There are people you have to obey you have to contrast your will to that of other people. You have to live with others, and sometimes this implies that you have to obey their will, or they obey your will. Then there is also a level of obedience which concerns the relationship to ourselves. Whether, for instance, we comply, we obey certain urges that we have. There's a level of obedience there. So what I'm trying to say is that obedience does not concern only superiors, the state or God. It concerns many other levels. It's much wider than that. It begins with my physical being, my conscious being, and my interpersonal being. And there are a lot of things I have to obey, whether I like it or not. And it is deeper than that, because it concerns our ego. When we have a conflict of will, sometimes over very small things, I want this and the other, I want this to be like that, and he wants it to be like that, and we fight. It's not a question of whether it's like that or like that. It's a question of ego. There's an ego in the middle. And some of us have bigger egos than others. Why is it a question of ego? Because when I yield my will to that of others, I feel the discomfort at being diminished, my ego being diminished. So our concern, basically there, is having our means of producing our own way, our means of producing our own way of living, for instance, of happiness, of my evening or my morning or my future, my means of production is taken away, more or less, and I don't like that. Nobody likes one's means of producing his own future or his own agenda or his own day or his own plan taken away. And so we rebel in that case. That's why obedience is always a suffering. Ultimately, what it concerns, and this is very serious, what it concerns is our psychological, unconscious, constant fear of being destroyed. So, obedience is always a negotiation between my ego and the ego of others, or the will of others, because it can be a physical will. When one feels challenged by, for instance, a storm or by some physical discomfort and wants to win that discomfort, there's a sort of will coming from an inanimate source. But again, we have to negotiate. How much am I ready to give in order to take? Should I obey my wife always? Should I obey my superior, my boss always? How much am I'm ready to diminish my ego in order not, how much can I diminish my ego in order not to cease to exist, but to increase it if possible? So that's why the ego comes in every act of obedience, whether it's towards God, the state, to my physical being, to other people. It's a negotiation. I am being diminished. My ego is being diminished. And when that is excessive, I do not like it, because I feel threatened. I am being diminished to a point, possibly to extinction. If the will is taken, you're nothing. You die. You die existentially. And nobody likes that. So people, including us, we can be killed existentially without being physically killed. When a person's will is destroyed, and you've got literature like 1984 and so many others, where the will is diminished to nil, and the person, the individual, the individuality is destroyed. This is sometimes the theory of fascist theory, where you've got the state is in fact the will of the individuals, because the will of the individuals is diminished to the point of extinction. So things usually are not that dramatic, but in every act of obedience there is this possibility, this hint of being diminished to a point of extinction, and we do not like it. As you see, now, since up to this point, I have been going along with most philosophers who pitch the them, them, others, and I. We are against each other, and it is a battle of wills, a battle of egos. This is how it is taken, and today's capitalist system, together with the neoliberal philosophy, likes this, because it makes a doctrine of Hobbes' famous dictum, homo homini lupus. Man is a wolf to man. We are wolves to each other. We are in a competition. We are here to fight it out. And that's what neoliberalism does. It gives the possibility that everyone runs. Whether you're capable of it or not, we have to run, and there's a race going on, and it's a capitalistic race, it's for capital, and so the idea that we are all single and there's no community, there's no common thing between us, helps the philosophy of obedience. Now, you may think that we're going a bit, we're trying the stone too far away from the center, but we're not. When we talk of obedience, we are talking, in fact, about a social system. The way obedience is managed in a family shows what type of family that is. Even between a couple, the way obedience is managed between the couple, you'd know what the relationship is in that couple, who's boss, who's servant, who has the reins in one's hand, what system there is between even a couple. And so the way we obey or not obey, the way we are given free rein for things we are not obliged to obey, indicates a social structure. It is an indication. So the social structure is, in fact, ordering and structuring how we obey or not, or how much we have to obey, or how much we have to diminish our ego towards the state. And in turn, the social structure indicates, in fact, an economic model. Who keeps the purse? demands obedience. And who does not control the money has no right, has no claim but to obey, has no claim to giving orders but only to obey. When someone is in a family and this person does not have any means, independent means of sustenance, that person has to obey the one who is providing the money, whether it's official or not. So you see that, in fact, when we talk about obedience, we're talking about a social structure and an economic model. Because every social structure has an economic model, of course, and a philosophy of obedience. Who has to obey who? Even our society, like all societies, even our government, our governmental system, there is a way of obeying, there is a way of following rules, there is a way of compliance, there is a way of how to comply and how to conform, and that whole thing is a social structure. So, despite all this, despite that obedience indicates a social structure and an economic model, nevertheless, it remains artificial. Artificial and subjective and arbitrary. There is no social structure that is natural. There is no social structure or economic model that is not subjective or that is not artificial. We invent structures. In my family, if I've got a wife and children, we decide what structure we'll have, more or less, in our family. Of course, with social pressure and all that. But it is artificial. It can be this way or that way. We can decide what we do. We can decide who is boss. We can decide whether we do things together. But the point is this. It is artificial. It is subjective. And every system is like that. So, what I'm trying to say is, though we have a system here today in our country, but even in Europe and most of the world, where capitalism and neoliberalism are dictating things, they are, in fact, artificial and subjective and arbitrary. They can change. They are not eternal. They have not been since always, and they may change. Now I'm saying this because a lot of people would think that this is a natural state of affairs. It is natural that homo homini lupus. And when Hobbes and others before Hobbes and after him made a whole doctrine of this dictum, that we are wolves unto each other, that we are in a competition against each other, that if I don't triumph, you will triumph, that someone has to profit over others, as the capitalistic system teaches us, that this is natural. You talk to whoever you'd like, and ultimately they'll tell you that we are basically against each other, and this is natural. It is natural that we work for our part as everyone would work for one's part. We are in fact disjointed. We have to think for ourselves. We cannot rely on others. We cannot, not even our parents sometimes. We have to rely on ourselves. We are at sea and everyone has to save himself. This is basically the theory of capitalism buoyed with neoliberalism, which makes it more dangerous. Neoliberalism just makes capitalism more dangerous. But that is basically what we're talking about, that the system of obedience that exists today, that you have to obey the market system, the competitive system, the homo homini lupus system, is natural, and it has always been like that, and always will be like that. And that's not true. First, it is not natural, it is artificial, and subjective, and arbitrary. Second, it has not always been like that. And third, it need not be always like that. That's my point. So, is there another possible model of obedience, yet without pitching egos, without pitching me against you, without pitching wills or egos against each other? Yes, there is. And there are philosophers who, the other system of basically what I'm calling the capitalistic, what we today call the capitalistic system, was accepted by most philosophers as natural, and by many philosophers as natural, and they honed the philosophy. That is, they accepted it as basically okay, but it could be improved. You know, our society today, our capitalistic society, our capitalistic neoliberal society is okay, it's not bad. We just have to improve some areas, you know, a bit more control of the minister, a bit more of control of his secretaries, a bit more rules for better economic competition, a better control of the banks, a little bit more control of taxes, but basically it is good. That is what we listen every day. We are in a good system. It works. We only have to improve it. That's why Parliament exists, to improve the system. But they never say that the system is wrong. And they never say that the system is arbitrary, artificial, and subjective, and there could be another one. And some people cannot even imagine a different world. What they would suggest is that they'll tell you, what is the alternative? Communism is the alternative. Nobody wants communism, Stalin and Lenin, but that's not the alternative. That's not the only alternative. So philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, Confucius before them, St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, all the empiricists, the Illuminists you were mentioning, Rawls, John Rawls and his philosophy of justice, and many others have done this. They accepted the system and said it only has to be improved. Other philosophers did not agree with this and said that it is not absolutely necessary and certainly not natural that I am a wolf towards others. It is not natural to be. It is not necessarily so. We need not be enemies. We need not run against each other. For instance, Ibn Khaldun, for instance, in the 14th century, Rousseau, Kant, William Golding, Stirner, John Stuart Mill, Proudhon, Gramsci, Foucault, Zizek, they all proposed another way of conceiving obedience. Imagine, if you'd like to imagine just a couple at home, you, a couple at home, or me in my comfort with 6 others and my superior. Imagine us in a competition of wills, or you and against your wife, or you against your husband, a competition of wills. And these philosophers say, it does not need to be like that. You need not compete with each other who is going to get the upper hand. So, of course, you may already intuit the alternative. There is an us. When we are together, obedience, when we are in the same boat and we are not competing against each other, when we are not pitched against each other, as the capitalistic and neoliberal philosophy wants us to be, individualistic. When we are together, when we conceive ourselves as partners in the same adventure, the concept of obedience changes, even the social structure and the economic model. But let's talk about obedience. The concept of obedience is changed, because it is not who shall prevail as it was in the other system, as we understand it today. When we are individualized and fractured, and we are all on our own, as are the philosophy today, the capitalistic philosophy teaches and imbues our mind with, that's what happens. We fight each other, but we need not be like that. Obedience within a social organization of equals ceases to be a question of battling and contesting my and others' wills, or which will prevail. And I would suggest a society of mutual consent, in a system of what we call consensualism, where we agree what should be done, in a system of equals, where there is no lord and nobody who imposes the will of the authority, or even if it's legitimate. So we need not live necessarily in a system where there is an authority and who gives orders and we have to obey. Now, in all contexts, at work, at the home, in government. So what I'm trying to say tonight is that even if we don't go there, even if we don't go in that direction, which is very difficult in our current state of capitalism, which is one of the most powerful forces ever in all history that there was, is capitalistic, especially when it's sustained with the neoliberal philosophy, and Malta and Gozo also sustained by religion, because today our spirituality, Catholic spirituality, especially in Malta, is personalized. It's you and God. It speaks, most spirituality, Catholic spirituality, teaches of your sanctification, you and God, you and your Christ, you and your holy saint or whatever. So it is individualistic. It is a religion. It is a spirituality which is helping, in fact, capitalism, the capitalist philosophy. Because the capitalist philosophy pitches us against each other. And when every single individual has his own God, his own private niche, and his own relationship to God, and the trend today is each and every single one working and striving for one's sanctification, it means that we are all separated from each other. But we rarely think, we rarely listen, hear about a religion that is, in fact, not made of individuals, but of the community. So I think this is not our subject exactly, but it helps strengthen this idea of obedience of wills as everyone on one's own. But there is another way of, what I'm trying to say tonight is that there is another way. This is not natural. This is not necessarily authentic. Even if it is presented so, I understand that it has to be presented so because this is the philosophy, this is the culture we are in. And it is a triumphant culture. The capitalistic and today neoliberal and buoyed by religion is successful, undoubtedly. And I don't think there has ever, in all history, been a philosophy that was as successful as capitalism. I don't think that ever, in all history, if one considers states. But in a society, if we imagine a society where there is no absolute authority, but an authority of consensualism, where we decide things together, even what the laws are. What I'm suggesting here is direct democracy, direct rule, not delegated rule, not representational rule, not 5-year rule, not even 1-day rule. So obedience takes a different dimension because it is an obedience towards a common will. When a couple at home decides that they are equal and they decide things together, nobody has to obey the other. The idea of obedience, of course, is towards their common will. Whenever there is a question of obedience, it is something common, together. So it is very different from when the husband says, listen, I am the boss here. I say what happens and what doesn't. Or of course, the wife or the woman says, I am the boss here. You have to obey me. So the two situations are very different. So it is, contrary to this, there would be a cooperative effort for the benefit of all in the same way. And there are societies and models of societies that work like that. And there has been in the past and there will be in the future. Obedience shall be to my as to everybody else's common will to live happily within a community of shared toil and benefits. So that is another model. And what I'm suggesting today is that we should think about this. At least if we don't do anything, if we don't rebel against capitalism because we like it, we like it very much, we like its benefits because we take something at least. But if we don't go there, at least we think that there is another possibility instead of this. So the question to come, I don't know if it's, yeah, now we can talk. Should I always obey? What's the answer? Basically, all possibilities where there's in any possibility, the answer is yes. I should always obey certain things. In a totalitarian state, it is yes, always. The police, the army, the government, I have to obey. In a capitalistic, neoliberal, democratic state, yes, always, with reservations, as we do today. In a non-capitalistic, liberal, democratic state, yes, always, however, with consent. So the difference would be whether the society I live in is basically my enemy, but we're on good terms, but it's still my enemy. In a non-capitalistic liberal democracy, society is not my enemy. Society is me, my consent, and my will. So yes, we have to obey some things, but the concept of obedience would not be a threat to your ego or a threat to your psychological or existential being. It won't be a threat, but it would be a help, as you would be a help to others. So I would say that I really do think that we have to begin to think collectively about living together without being enemies of each other. And this would mean denying the philosophy of capitalism that today is so successful. Okay, I'll stop here and we'll discuss.
Various meanings of obedience. I think we have some time now to open the discussion for any clarifications, questions, personal reflections, and
Shoot.
Father Mark is ready to be able to tackle our various questions. Yes, no one would like to start?
I thought you're all
rolling.
Okay, who's first?
So, if I've understood
I think it's better with you.
So, Mother Mark, if I understood correctly, you mentioned a lot of fallacies intricately linked to capitalism and to communism, to totalitarianism. Are you advocating a third way of politics?
Yes.
And if I understood correctly, you mentioned quite briefly direct democracy. You mentioned quite briefly direct democracy.
Yeah.
Is direct democracy part and parcel of this third way of politics? The direct democracy adopted in Switzerland, maybe in the Swiss cantons?
Yes.
The referendum which take place regularly in Switzerland?
Yes.
So isn't the Swiss model which is to be adopted there? Because the Swiss model, even though they've got direct democracy, they still elect a national government for a term.
Yes. With different...
For a number of years.
Yeah, with different... but the remit would be different, and the powers would be different. The system we have in Malta today, or what we call usually democracy without any qualification, basically the British American philosophy, would be representational, delegation of power, and it's not direct at all. But there are others. There's the Arab democracy, for instance, or the tribal democracy. But the problem is that capitalism won't see that as democracy, and it's not qualified. It does not qualify as democracy. So only the representational system usually is called democracy, with the powers invested in delegates and representatives. And it's not direct philosophy at all, democracy at all. Yes, I think this system is not respectful to people, and it's I think it is seriously harming people, because it has to have a system of disjointing everyone on its own. So it is keeping you happy, him happy, me happy, but not us happy. Because we have to be divided for the system to triumph. And unfortunately, our spirituality today, which is very powerful in Malta and Gozo, is helping this. It is helping a private private spirituality, which is totally the communal, the solidarity thing is twisted around to mean that we help others, we benefit others, but it's always my spirituality, me on my own, my sanctification. Actually, it is a heresy, I think. Especially in Christianity, it is a heresy. There is no private spirituality in Christianity. I don't think there is, but that's what is taught. Yes, there is a third way, if you'd like to call it a third way.
But
And it's direct democracy.
wouldn't direct democracy then bring about? Wouldn't direct democracy bring about a political stalemate? In the sense, the last time I was here, for instance, we were discussing the issue of the introduction of divorce in the Maltese Islands. A couple of years ago, I was here. Actually, it was 2012, I suppose. We were discussing the introduction of divorce or not in the Maltese Islands. Definitely, that is an important topic which had to be decided at the national level through a referendum. However, if you have to place all issues in front of an electorate, wouldn't that bring about a political statement at the end of the day? If we had to,
First of all, I think that a referendum on divorce is a stupid thing. Why should I, a priest, vote on something I will never have to do, nothing to do? I voted. Actually, I didn't vote, but I could have voted. Yes or no? Why should I vote on something like that? Why should I vote on gay rights? Why should I vote on things hunting thing? I don't know A to B in it, and yet I was called to vote, which is stupid. I should have a direct say in things that concern me. Or my work, or my. So a direct democracy is not this national, because it's not true. There's no national debate on that, and there's no national vote. And in the ultimate analysis, it was who has the most money to make the most noise, which is not fair. It's not democracy. What's happening in America? A tragedy in America. Trump has enormous sources of money and he's just playing with democracy. It can be done. That is the democracy for you. I hope that he will be elected president. I really do hope. Just to ridicule the system. Because it's ridiculous. So when you have direct democracy, it would not be national things. It would be more smaller pockets, and then a group of pockets. So it will be a different system. But I think we should think about this, because it seems that everyone's taking capitalism for granted. And we have to remember that we are here very comfortable because there are millions who are suffering for us. We don't see that. We don't see that. We enjoy our commodities, but those commodities, people are praying with their lives for them in places we don't see. Cheap labor, children, women, and all that. But this is not fair. And you could say, yeah, but I cannot do anything, and that's the first thing someone would say. Secondly, yes, someone has to work, and someone maybe has to benefit, maybe the second thing. And the third thing would be, do they really exist? Is it truly like that? Because this is the whole picture, the Western picture. We wouldn't be talking about whether capitalism is good or bad if we're in a factory doing commodities for the West. So most of our discussions, in fact, are class discussions, because we are comfortable and we like our comfort and we like our benefactors and we don't want them to perish. But I think what our benefactors have done, their triumph is that they destroyed our sense of, one of the things is they destroyed our sense of solidarity.
But I don't agree with any of this.
Thank God.
I think that we are what we eat.
We are what we eat. Okay.
We are what we eat.
Yeah, okay.
We think accordingly, according to what we eat.
Okay.
We have very little capacity of independent thinking, because the system itself, we are the product of a system, whatever it is. Right now it's neoliberalism, capitalism, but we are a product, even the way we think, we are a product of that system.
Yes.
And however much we may try to dissent, we cannot escape that system, because outside that system, we don't exist, and we cannot exist, and we cannot exist even physically. And I beg to differ on what you said about capitalism. It's never has there been a system like this, of all engulfing and so on and so forth. I disagree. Before capitalism, there were other systems which were all engulfing. The church, for example. If I were born even 50 years ago, if I were born 50 years ago, I would probably be buried in the Misbla. And if I had the misfortune of having been born 150 years ago, I would have been definitely, for my ideas, I would have definitely been burned at the stake. So,
I still think that
So,
the church never had the power of capitalism as capitalism, the success of capitalism. I don't think that there was, and I repeat though, I don't think there was ever an ideology that had, I would say, I would put it in philosophical terms, there has never been an ideology of such hegemony. Never.
but every
Not even the
ideology
church.
breeds on
The
an
Catholic
economic
Church.
system. Even the church bred on a certain economic system.
Yes.
Today, the church is dwindling down. Why? Because the economic system has changed.
Yes.
This is why the church is becoming atomized and whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying, having said all this, I am not saying that we should obey. I don't want to be misunderstood. But it's very difficult and very, and sometimes very dangerous not to obey the prevailing system.
Yes, I agree.
So what you have to do is to think, as you have done, on an alternative system, but that alternative system must be viable, and it comes in its own time. We cannot invent another system and convince others, or try to convince others.
I agree with you.
Because it will fail.
Yeah.
It will succeed when the time comes. Like Karl Marx said, every society bears the germs of its own destruction. Even capitalism bears the germs of its own destruction. But in the prevailing system, we have to think out the best way how to mitigate the effects,
The bad effects.
the bad effects of that system, whilst, okay, thinking of an alternative system. But we can't just say, we're going to disobey the system. I think about on another level, about the...
Yeah, just we'll finish this. I agree with you 100% as long as I'm not the Asian worker, and as long as I'm not the refugee, as long as I'm comfortable, I agree with you. But 100%, as long as I'm not the underdog. And if you'd like, yes, we shall wait and let the system fizzle away, take its course, as long as I've got everything to eat, as you said, and I'm comfortable and I don't have problems. I agree with you. But this reveals a serious lack of solidarity with people who do not have millions. I'm talking about millions of people, even in Europe, even hundreds in our own country, that are not comfortable, are not, thanks to the system and for us to benefit. So yes, I agree with you, as long as I'm not the one who's suffering.
No, I wouldn't.
In the same way, I agree with Hitler 100%. I agree with Hitler 100% as long as I'm not a Jew in Berlin or in Krakow. I agree with him as long as I'm not a Jew.
In Malta, way back 30 years ago, we did experiments with the economy, with politics.
It's not. I'm not going there. What I'm saying is that.
What was the result?
But what we have to begin is to question things. Very few people are questioning things.
I'm the first
and there are little things you can do.
I'm the first one to question everything, but
yeah, okay.
There are limits. There are limits to, unfortunately, there are limits to what we can do.
But I think we're understanding each other. Okay. Oh, there's someone back there.
I'm not really sure if I can express myself 100%, but I did like the two discussions going on between the last two gentlemen. And from what I deduct is that through the latest belief of capitalism, the regrettable issue is that we have lost our sense of community. And I think that's what you wanted to point out first and foremost. And maybe it could be an interesting concern or an interesting idea on how can we introduce again a sense of community, which is an integral part of our essential self, and that's what we were supposed to be as a human being. We were functioning as a community, and it was only the capitalistic belief, actually, it's not even a system, it's a belief, that preaches your individuality. Because as an individual, you become an interesting commodity in the market. We can sell you something. So, okay, now that we know these things, why not try to... Capitalism is there and it has its big advantages. It creates a very, strangely enough, very unviolent... It's very strange, but this is one of the most peaceful periods in our human existence. Unlike the media likes to make us believe. But why not think of it's here, but let's improve it. And how can we improve it? By reintegrating a sense of community. And as you said also, it has to be small pockets, because as a human species, we can only function comfortably within small pockets of people. But you would still have to obey one person who would be kind of like some sort of leader who would look over the benefit of everybody else as a community, but allows everybody to express and work together for the community, I think. So maybe that's an idea to play with?
Yeah. Yeah, but you mentioned that this is one of the most peaceful periods, longest. And that again, I agree with you. As long as I'm not Syrian, as long as I'm not Palestinian, as long as I'm not South African, as long as I'm not Nigerian, as long as I'm not in a war zone, which is a very unfair comment, I would say, because there has been always wars that are necessary. And Middle East is one of them. As long as I'm not a refugee from Jerusalem or from Lebanon or from Syria, yes, I agree with you. There is a period of peace, but where is this peace and at what price? And we talk like that because we're here. But we wouldn't talk like that if we were in Palestine, if we were from Gaza.
But do you attribute these conflicts in the Middle East to capitalism?
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly, they are provoked wars for gain of the West. Undoubtedly, the conflict in Syria, the conflict in the last conflicts in the Middle East, undoubtedly. We are on the eve of another conflict in Libya, which is absolutely worked out and provoked. And it will continue to be a red zone until the West takes what it wants, oil. Then the war will stop. There will be a government after a union government, a unity government, a new government, a reformed government, a whatever government, until the West takes what it wants. And it's Libya's oil. Now you see, it is all worked out. And until there is that result, there won't be peace in Libya. And there won't be a stable government in Libya, as there's not in the Middle East. Because they are provoked wars because of oil. If there wasn't oil in the Middle East and in Libya, there would not have been war. There would not have been. Thank God that, and this is another reason why there's peace in Malta, a long peace in Malta, because we don't have anything nobody can steal. We don't have anything anybody wants. We don't have anything.
We still clash, no?
Not even water this summer. So nobody fights over our scraps. We don't have thank God.
No, but we did fight between each other, no?
Sorry?
We did fight between each other anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, in the 80s, when we were just a war.
Yes, we fight against each
I mean,
other.
when it comes to clashes, human beings, conflicts, so ingrained in our psyche. So basically, all the ideas about community and solidarity, I'm aware of it. We are bound to clash. It won't work. It will never happen, I'm sure.
Yeah, we shall always clash.
Because conflict, even between close friends, siblings, couples, whatever, you have conflict all the time happening. Psychologically, it's so complex, we cannot be, even two people are bound to clash, not all the state, a community, a society.
But just a second, because I think we're going too fast here, because the 80s were the final phase of our independence process. And I think, relatively speaking, when compared to other countries, it was relatively peaceful. Whoever brought it about, it was relatively peaceful. If you could, very little blood was
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky, but still.
we weren't lucky.
But
This
what I'm saying is
was because it was planned.
people are bound to clash all the time because interests are different. There are always interests.
Why not? But there's a difference when there's a clash between enemies and between friends. Friends do fight, but they fight as friends.
I think conflict as such is part of human condition, even if Sartre talks a lot about this now, even in case something looks at you. And you remember that as foresight.
Yes.
I mean, it's something so true,
Yes.
You're sitting there.
I'm not saying, I'm not promising or hinting that there can be heaven on earth. I'm not saying that. And whoever says that is just dreaming. But the lady there said that one of the things that capitalism has made us forget is the sense of community. And I agree 100%. And the word is exactly that, community, because today they use the word community, but they don't mean community, actually, the sharing of goods. And not only that, it made us forget love. Love is today part of the consumer system. Love. Not love your neighbor. It doesn't exist. The third thing, which is the most sad, is that they made us forget happiness. Happiness, to be happy. We are not happy. We are, all of us, animal tension and depression is sky high. Why should that be? I don't think we are created not to be happy, or we live not to be happy. We exist to be happy, at least. And I think the road to happiness is only love. And love implies community. That's how I see it, sorry.
Me too, but still, we're bound to clash. I mean, and even such civilizations might flourish one day, they will always be replaced by
consensualism doesn't say that we wouldn't clash. This is the idea of consensualism, if you consider it holistically, that when we clash, then we consent to move together despite our weaknesses, our vices, our whatever. That's consensualism. It implies conflict. There will always be conflict.
When you mentioned the fact that there should be another way in your political or economical system, you described it in such a way that I felt that you envisage this thing, like it will happen in a peaceful way. But when we look at history, we see that most of the times, if not ever, when the system was replaced, it only happened through a violent revolution. So what makes you think that this is not happening? I'm talking not just about, for instance, like it happened in Malta when there was the Labour government of the 1970s and the 80s, and that was replaced by the nationalist government. That is something which was minor to what, as compared to what happened, for instance, in Russia or in the French Revolution. I'm talking about that kind of replacement, like a major one. So my question is, do you really think that this is so easy, like you change a system, a way of thinking just by presenting it in a positive way, or this has to happen through a violent revolution?
I don't think it has to be violent. No, I don't believe in violence. I don't think it has to be violent. And
do you think that this is well accepted?
sorry.
Like the capitalistic neoliberal system, do you think that it will accept an alternative way to capitalism?
Yes, sure.
It will collapse.
Yes, sure.
But for the collapse, it will take a lot of time.
It will collapse, like every other system. But if you try to fight it, you won't win. If you try to, as you say, clash with it, you won't win. Take the British the Industrial Revolution in Britain.
No, but just
It was a peaceful revolution.
Capitalism.
A transition from feudalism to capitalism. The Industrial Revolution in Britain. In France, it took a different path.
What he's saying is
France,
that there's a lifespan.
There's
There's a lifespan and
It was the same process.
This system itself.
It was the same process in England. What happened in England and what happened in France, although they were and still are eternal rivals, although they had different system. The British system was a gradualistic one and a peaceful one, more or less, because even there they cut off Cromwell's head. So the king's head, however, Cromwell cut off the king's head. So beheaded the king. And in France, it was.
But I think the system, well, no, the system
more messy.
But
it was the same process.
No, but the thing is that this position ignores other places where the system has already failed, where people are dying,
yeah, but the system
not hungry, dying.
But on a macro level, that's wrong. That's the problem with the system.
But we're always talking from our vantage point, from our comfort zone. We don't take into consideration, and this is what the worst part of it is, that when we think as individualists. We do not think globally. We do not take into consideration where capitalism has already failed. And dramatically failed. But we don't consider that because we're not there. We're here where it's thriving.
But it can be part.
So it's not fair to say
it's
that.
It's necessary for the system itself to keep itself going. You have unemployment. That can be necessary for the system so that people won't be even more. So it still recycles itself all the time. I mean, we had a crisis, a financial crisis recently now.
What I am suggesting is that I think that we are ideologically starved. In Malta, in Gozo, and these are other places, we are ideologically starved, and if we must, as a philosophical society, I think, give a contribution, I think it has to be an ideological enrichment. And I believe in Gozo, especially in Gozo Hodis, because there are a lot of foreigners here who can give an input which is different from us Maltese. At least we'll hear something different. But I would say that there are other areas where this ideological richness can come. One thing is that I think that in Malta, maybe not in Gozo, but in Malta, the ones who will save us, and even save our religion, would be the refugees. Maybe not in a year or two, but they will be the ones who will save us. Because they bring a different sense of being. And I think that can help us. But in Gozo, for president, I think that yes, we are what we eat, and we are starved. We are starved ideologically, and it's very serious, very serious. And I think there must be an ideological richness and a philosophical one. Okay.
But why do we always try to demonize? I'm sorry.
I thought you were talking.
Sorry, Monica. Ladies first.
I might be taking this subject a bit out of this framework.
Okay. Good.
I'm challenging the fact that you said we must obey. Okay, I have a real issue with a lot of issues. Okay, first of all, as a human being, I have the right for organic food. I have the right to have fresh water. I have the right to live in a peaceful society. Okay, I have the right for health. Everyone has this, and this is we're talking about community. Okay, what a lot of people don't realise what's actually going on at the moment, and I'm trying to get so many people to wake up. The problem is we are obeying, we are sticking within a framework, and we're not challenging that framework. Okay, people need to realise that we think we're living in a free society. We are not living in a free society. We have families like the Rothschilds that actually own half the wealth of the world. And that's why we have starving people, starving children in this world. They own our banks. One day they're just going to wake up just going to actually shut down our banking system. Everyone is in debt. They like it that way. What it means is we actually have to spend 40 years, 50 years of our life paying off a mortgage. It makes us stupid, it makes us dumb, it makes us, we don't have time outside of our working day to actually think.
As a result of capitalism, that's what the second.
It's part of the plan.
Now you spoke about how we don't have any rain. There's a reason for that. It's because of weather modification. Our weather has been modified for the last 20 years.
Since the beginning of the universe.
No, excuse me. No, I'm specifically speaking about chemtrails. I'm talking about the planes that are actually throwing aluminium into our atmosphere. It makes me physically sick. Every morning you can see it just sprayed all over our islands. This is the reason why we haven't had a drop of water this whole winter. This is the reason why the Syrians have actually been displaced from their country. There are hidden agendas, and we are all subject to it, and we think that we're living in a free society. Well, we're not. Our food, there's a reason why we are moving towards genetically modified food. It's because the chemtrails with the aluminium that is being sprayed is going into our soil. Our seeds cannot survive aluminium soil.
Yeah.
So we are forced to actually buy genetically modified.
Yeah.
Now there was a key case in Australia that they actually lost the case. It was within the last month. There was one gentleman who had acres of organic food. His neighbour from across the road, he had genetically modified food. What happened was there was a storm, all the genetically modified seeds flew into his organic acreage. Okay, he lost 80% of his organic status. It went up to court, and guess what? The Monsanto team, they got so much money, okay, they actually won the whole genetically modified thing. And what's going to actually happen is if you're trying to actually grow an organic farm and they find seeds that are genetically modified in your acres, they'll actually charge you a license. Now this is the corruption that we're up against. Now, when we're talking about genetically modified, I mean, you just have to look around. How many people are gluten intolerant these days? The reason we're gluten intolerant is because we don't have natural flour anymore. All our flour is genetically modified. So of course we're going to be sick. If we can't consume something that's natural, we're actually going to react to it.
Yeah, but I think we're reading on the same page, because what we're saying is this is part of the whole story, that ultimately, actually, the capitalistic system needs you as a consumer, but you're dispensable. It doesn't, because everything is calculated on a mass scale, and the individual, though important as a consumer, isn't dispensable as long as there is a market for, because the concept is not, let me be ridiculous again, love. The concept is profit and super profit and super profit, not for you, for anonymous people. Now what I'm saying is that in Malta, at least here I see this ideological starvation, and you see it, because we don't care less what happened to this farmer in Australia. We don't care less, as long as we have our food, our bread, and we are what we eat. And this is wrong.
But this is my point. This is our
Yes,
problem
yes,
as well.
I agree with you. I agree. We've got people, I keep telling people, we've got people in detention camps, not in Australia, here. And yet we don't care less. We don't care less. And that's the triumph of capitalism. And I don't think, you mentioned the church as being triumphant. If the church was triumphant, everybody would love one another. And it was never like that. So the church was not triumphant. But capitalism has been triumphant because all of us believe in this God which is called comfort, at least we in the West.
I don't think it's a question of whether we believe in it or not. It's actually being imposed upon us. Because I don't believe in this system at all. But I know I don't have a choice. It doesn't matter who I vote for within our It doesn't matter who I actually vote for within our political system, but this is actually being played way above our political system and way above everyone's political system.
Yeah, this is good, because yes, I will take that bet. It's not that believing, because I may not believe in something, but it is the conviction that, and this is the thing, not believing, the conviction that there's no other way, that it is stupid to think of another way. This is the thing, not belief. Yes, because I can not believe in something, but say, but there's no other way. And this is the problem here, that that the capitalistic, the neoliberal capitalistic system has taken away the possibility of seeing another way as reasonable. If I make myself clear, that we feel stupid to think otherwise. And people who oppose this whole conspiracy are looked foolish, appear foolish. So that's when I say that we are ideologically starved, and we can be nourished ideologically by trying to see things as you were saying, and as the other one said.
Yes. Coming back to your opening statement, we must obey. I actually think we need to challenge, what people are actually imposing on us. The people that we vote in power, we think we are under the belief that they're actually there to protect our interests. So whatever they tell us to do, we obey. But, they actually have their own agendas.
Yeah, what I tried to say is that in the new perspective of we instead of us and them, there's no obedience. There's consent between us. There's consensualism, not obedience. Obedience makes sense where there are orders given and orders obeyed. In a society of consent, nobody has to give orders and nobody has to obey.
It's anarchy, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, you're an anarchist. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the problem with it.
That's the problem.
I cannot conceive an anarchic society when I think about how we are well.
I don't. Okay, thank you for your
That
point.
is the problem.
And in my humble opinion, with all due respect, it is plain stupid to blame the West for everything under the sun. Okay, imperialism has left quite nasty impacts on different parts of the world, but blaming the West for everything under the sun is, in my opinion, ridiculous. The West, with all its defects and with all its fallacies, has brought about a huge advancement when it comes to medicine. Let's face it, when it comes to health and when it comes to financial terms, no one have never had it so good for a long time. This system, which everyone blames for everything, has brought stability, has brought human rights, has brought fundamental freedoms to the core as core values of the systems. It has brought about cutting-edge technology. It has brought about cutting-edge medical care.
This is another subject, but I am very surprised that you mentioned health. That because this is the worst part of the capitalistic system. That it creates a problem to solve it.
But let's face it, 50 years ago, people died at the age of 45 or 50. Today, the majority die at the age of 75.
Yes,
Only the exceptions die at the age of 35 or 50.
But health it's not our subject, but health is the greatest industry and the greatest corruption is in health. Precisely there, medical things. But that is
at the same time.
I don't think it's a good. So we will start to send emails, and maybe you can talk to your friends, and slowly we'll build up a discussion community. But it shall always be on the first Wednesday of each, first Friday of each month. Okay, thank you.
So, thank you very much. Probably if we had more time, the discussion would continue, but obviously some of us have to return back to Malta. Thank you once again. I hope that this was a good start to the Gozo section of the foundation, and as Father Mark has just said, we hope that on the first Friday of every month, this group and probably a larger group will be meeting on a regular basis to discuss important issues which obviously are not only speculation, but I mean also practical, and they touch our daily lives. Thank you very much. I think